Focusing outward heals. Focusing inward makes you sick. This life principle is the central theme of this talk. At first glance, it may sound provocative. Is it really unhealthy to look inward? In fact, psychology and practical experience suggest that excessive self-reflection often intensifies suffering, while an outward focus can be healing. When we are trapped in our own minds and bodies, we lose connection with the world. But when we shift our attention to other people, meaningful tasks, or nature, we often experience relief and recovery. In this talk, we will calmly and thoughtfully explore why that is and how this philosophy relates to happiness, health, and even chronic illness. Everyday observations. Distraction reduces symptoms. Let us start with everyday experience. Perhaps you felt unwell or in pain, only to have that discomfort fade when something captivating draws your attention, a compelling conversation, a movie, or an urgent project. Distraction can push pain and unease into the background. Medical research confirms this. Pain becomes intense when it dominates our attention. But when we're mentally engaged or emotionally involved, the brain releases natural painkillers. In one study, participants exposed to heat pain reported significantly less discomfort during a challenging memory task. Imaging showed that the pain signals in the spinal cord were dampened by cognitive effort. This is called stress-induced analgesia. In high stress or dangerous moments, our bodies release endorphins and cannabinoids to suppress pain so we can function. Later, when we relax, the pain returns. A famous example, football goalkeeper Bert Troutman played an entire 1956 final with a broken neck, so focused and pumped with adrenaline that he initially felt no pain. On the flip side, we all know how a mild toothache can become unbearable when we're lying awake at night with nothing else to focus on. This everyday pattern, pain and symptoms fading when the mind is elsewhere, already reveals the truth of the outward healing focus. Another example, during crises like war, suicide rates paradoxically decline. People become focused on survival, turning outward. Their inner distress recedes. This doesn't glorify suffering, but illustrates when our attention is bound to a powerful external goal, internal despair retreats. We forget ourselves for a while, and often there lies relief. Application to chronic illness, fatigue, pain, migraines, autoimmunity. What does this mean for chronic illness? Many long-term conditions come with a tendency to constantly look inward, scanning the body for fatigue, pain, or symptoms. But this perpetual self-monitoring becomes a trap. Chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, persistent pain, migraines, or autoimmune conditions often involve a vicious cycle of attention and symptom amplification. Neuroscience speaks of predictive interoception. The brain learns to interpret certain signals as pain and comes to expect it. That expectation, paired with fear and body scanning, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Chronic pain becomes a learned pattern sustained by fear and inward focus. The nocebo effect, where fear of symptoms makes them worse, is well documented. Studies estimate that 1 in 7 people suffers from chronic symptoms without an organic cause, pain, fatigue, digestive issues, often generated by the brain and maintained by attention. In autoimmune diseases, the immune system goes haywire. Yet psychology can influence immune reactions. Studies show that immune responses can be conditioned. Allergies can be triggered by the mere image of a flower. Conversely, pairing a flavored drink with antihistamines multiple times caused patients to have a subdued immune response to the drink alone. This suggests the mind can steer immune processes, for better or worse. If we constantly worry about symptoms and dwell on catastrophic thoughts, we may unknowingly fuel stress and inflammation. The body reacts to inner alarm. This is the interoception trap. Ongoing self-focus keeps the condition alive.
The hypothesis, then, chronic symptoms can be maintained by conditioned body responses and hypervigilant inward attention. Healing requires breaking this cycle by gently redirecting focus outward, away from constant symptom monitoring. Explaining the hypothesis, conditioned responses, and inward traps.
Imagine someone with chronic headaches. They scan for every twinge, fearing the next attack. Even a mild sensation triggers anxiety. It's starting again. And stress hormones amplify the pain. The expectation becomes reality. Psychologists call this catastrophizing, magnifying pain under an internal microscope. It creates a feedback loop that deepens suffering. The same applies to fatigue. Someone might feel slightly better one day and attempt an activity, but constantly checks in. Will I crash again? That self-surveillance creates mental stress. This is interoceptive hypervigilance, the overattention to bodily signals. People with anxiety or somatic disorders often report more symptoms, not because their bodies are worse, but because they watch them more. Normal fluctuations become misinterpreted as illness. This is where Viktor Frankl's concept of de-reflection comes in. He observed that problems, mental or physical, intensify the more we obsess over them. His method was to shift attention away from symptoms toward greater meaning. For example, sexual dysfunction often resolves not through performance pressure, but through losing oneself in connection. Frankl taught that healing begins when the I falls silent. When we let symptoms and pain be without constant analysis, self-regulation can resume. This takes trust and patience, but it's not denial. It's letting go of over-control. As Dr. Oliver Korn puts it, you can't win a fight against your inner world. Healing starts when we stop fighting ourselves. Scientific basis: psychoneuroimmunology, flow, extroversion.
Psychoneuroimmunology reveals how the psyche, nervous system, and immune system interact. Mental stress intensifies inflammation, but positive focus and relaxation allow immune repair. Constant inward fear triggers immune hyperactivity, and external focus calms the system and helps healing. Flow. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi coined flow to describe being fully immersed in activity. In flow, we're focused, content, and the self recedes. People in flow report creativity and fulfillment. Neurologically, the brain is so engaged, it stops processing pain or self-talk. Flow correlates with long-term happiness and resilience. It is the clearest example of outward focus as healing. Extroversion. Studies show that extroverts, people who focus on the world, tend to be happier and healthier. They experience more positive emotions, build stronger social networks, and recover better from stress. Even introverts feel better when they occasionally act outwardly. Constant inward focus, in contrast, often fuels depression and anxiety. Healing often begins with even small outward steps. Interoceptive hypervigilance can be counteracted by external attention. For example, in panic disorder therapy, patients are taught to shift attention away from perceived heart palpitations toward their surroundings. This breaks the panic cycle. The brain can't focus fully on inside and outside at the same time. Directing attention outward lets the nervous system settle. Philosophical roots: Frankl, Nietzsche, Laozi, Buddha, universal patterns. Frankl's logotherapy is built on meaning beyond the self. Happiness and health, he argued, are side effects of purpose. He quoted Nietzsche, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Laozi in Taoism teaches Wu Wei, or non-forcing, a state of alignment with the natural flow. Healing in this view occurs not through control, but by letting go. Wu Wei parallels flow and dereflection. Buddhism teaches that ego clinging causes suffering. Meditation fosters a detached view of thoughts and pain. This meta-perspective is another form of outward focus, stepping outside the ego. Many traditions agree. Happiness and healing come when we transcend the self. Whether through God, Tao, nature, or purpose, the message is the same. Einstein called it the miracle of comprehensibility, that the universe has structure beyond us. Even Paul Dirac said, God is a very high-level mathematician. The world operates in patterns. This principle, you gain by letting go, is one of them. Practical examples: gratitude, helping others, motherhood.
Gratitude is inherently outward. It shifts attention from lack to abundance. Studies show grateful people sleep better, have stronger immunity, and live longer. Gratitude reduces stress and reinforces a sense of connection, removing the focus from the ego. Helping others triggers the helper's high, dopamine, oxytocin, and positive emotion. It increases life satisfaction and buffers stress. One study found that stressed people who help others had no increased mortality risk, while non-helpers did. Giving heals the giver. Motherhood is a powerful example. Focus on the child activates oxytocin, lowers cortisol, and energizes even exhausted parents. Women under stress often tend and befriend, forming connections instead of fighting or fleeing. That connection itself heals. Friendship and support groups, too, direct attention away from personal pain and toward mutual care. They create healing feedback loops where giving and receiving reinforce resilience. Conclusion: healing happens when the self falls silent. In summary, we've seen that happiness and health often emerge indirectly. Obsessive self-monitoring and control attempts can block healing. Outward focus frees the mind and body. Healing happens when the ego quiets. Joy and balance arise as byproducts of engagement, purpose, and connection. This doesn't mean ignoring yourself, but finding balance, living instead of analyzing, acting instead of obsessing. Frankl said, "Happiness comes to those who find meaning without chasing it." When we turn outward toward love, work, faith, or wonder, healing often follows on its own. So next time you feel stuck in discomfort, take a small outward step. Look up, reach out, lend a hand, or dive into something meaningful. You may find that the world meets you halfway, and that relief, clarity, and peace are already waiting, because focusing outward heals.